Afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Terry Belcourt. I'm a registered nurse and nursing advisor here at the SRNA. My role today is to really help facilitate this webinar. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that this presentation is being held on Aboriginal land and recognize the strength, resilience, and capacity of the Treaty 4 and Métis people in this land. So our topic today is mental health in the workplace, and I'm so excited to introduce to you Sue Myers, who is an RPN and the interim registrar and practice advisor for the Registered Psychiatric Nurses Association of Saskatchewan. So welcome, Sue. Thank you so much for being here. I'll get her to introduce herself in just a minute. During this presentation, how you're going to be able to interact with us is through the chat box or through the Q&A. So you'll find those modules and areas to link into those sections either at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen. So feel free to put your questions in there. Sue's she has a presentation she's gonna provide for us and then take questions at the end. So I think that's it. We are recording this webinar just so that we can share the information for those who couldn't join us live today. So Sue, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Terry, for having me and for the SRNA for inviting the RPNAS to discuss a very important topic of mental health in the workplace. As registered psychiatric nurses, our expertise is in treating those with challenges in mental health. So a little bit about me. I have been a nurse educator for many, many years, probably the last 30-some years. And I was also the program head of the diploma in psychiatric nursing, as well as the Bachelor of Psychiatric Nursing degree completion. And both those programs run out of Sask Poly. And I retired in June of 2015, only to find work, and been doing some consulting types of work and really enjoying this. So thank you again to the SRNA for this invite. Okay, so mental health in the workplace. Just so that mental health is present within all our work environments. Okay, I want to present some statistics related to mental illness. 1 in every 5 persons will have a mental illness in their lifetime, and this also has far-reaching effects as it impacts all those who know this particular person that has the mental illness. Approximately 8% of adults will experience a major depression at some time in their lives, and 1% will experience bipolar depression. Approximately 500,000 Canadians call into sick each week. To me, that's just a very staggering number. In Canada, 20 million people are between the ages of 25 and 64. And out of that, probably 16 to 17 million work either full-time or part-time. And so if you were to do the 1 in 5, 3.4 million people will experience a mental illness. 47% of working Canadians agree that work is the most stressful part of their day. So just to put it in more perspective, we spend 60% of our waking hours at work. Stigma still exists for those with mental illness. A lot of times people are ashamed, they don't want to talk about it. It's an invisible disease. And, you know, it's not something like a physical illness where people can readily share with others. Mental illness cannot be cured, but people can recover and lead productive lives. Nurses are not immune to stressors or to mental illness. And, you know, I just want you to think of your practice environments and the demanding expectations that we have. You're asked to do more with less. There's budget constraints, the intensity of your clients, overtime, insufficient staffing, nurses' own high expectations, and then you add your personal life onto all of this, And what does that do to you as a professional? I always, I always say, do you have joy when you actually come to work? And there should be joy when you go to work, because that's, you're spending quite a fair amount of your time at work. But how it might play out is in the sense of anxiety or depression. Lots of stats have been coming out in the last few days because of the Bell's Let's Talk. And they're saying like 40% of working moms experience stress. Okay. So one of the things that the Canadian Mental Health Association developed was for members or for anyone to be able to assess their own mental health. And it's the mental health meter, and the website is on there for you to access. But they talked about 5 different characteristics of good mental health. Number 1 is the ability to enjoy life. So what they're talking about here is being engaged, living in the present, and that, of course, life has its ups and downs. Resilience is being able to deal with events, learning from your experiences, and bouncing back from stressors. Is there balance in your life? We were all taught about Maslow's hierarchy, and, there's physiological needs, there's safety needs, love and belonging, there's self-esteem needs and self-actualization, which is, of course, the next point. Self-actualization could include also taking risk and working towards goals in your life. And then the last characteristic of good mental health was flexibility or coping with change. So again, you can go to that mental health meter, and the website's been provided to you. Oops. So if you notice your colleagues at work or your peers and they're not themselves, do you take the time to investigate or to start the conversation? And that's what a lot of the Bell's talk today is about. Asking people, are you okay? I noticed some changes in you. Do you want to talk about it? And I think it's always respectful to understand that people may not wish to talk about it. But you may make the difference in someone's day by just opening up that conversation. You don't want to make assumptions about what's going on. And in 2017, the Canadian Mental Health Association had a campaign entitled Not Myself Today. And that campaign more or less gave members permission that it was okay to not be okay. So sometimes you do have all those off days. So the initiatives by Bell, Let's Talk, really champion the message that it's okay to talk about mental health and mental illness. And by starting the conversation, which is critical, and using language which is acceptable. For example, saying like the client with schizophrenia, not that crazy person. Be kind when you're talking, be respectful, be non-judgmental. And many of the commercials that are currently on the television right now that Bell has created have really important messages, these really important messages. Although the awareness of mental illness and stigma is decreasing, the conversation still needs to continue to ensure that those with mental illness get the help that they really deserve. So what can employers do? I think it's important to be aware of the statistics related to mental illness and how it may affect your employees. To create supportive environments. I know at Sask Poly, where I used to be, they have those yellow benches, which really facilitates conversation. They're throughout the building, and they're on a fundraising campaign to make sure that there's more yellow benches. So creative environments could also, or supportive environments could also be having education, related to awareness of mental illness and mental health. To show acceptance, to not be judgmental, and to show leadership by providing education and working towards healthy work environments. So to summarize, mental health is everywhere, and it impacts all of us, whether it's personally with our coworkers or within our patients. And it's important to seek to understand others and not to pass judgment. And if you notice changes with a coworker, reach out to those who are not themselves. You want to keep the conversation going. That's so critical. And to be aware of resources which are available through the Employees Family Assistance Plan, and also formal and informal resources like self-help groups, counselors. There's many resources that are out in the community. And as psychiatric nurses, we know about those particular resources, which will be helpful towards clients. And due to the nature and stressors of work, take time for self-care. And I can't stress that enough, whether it's, health is holistic. So you got to be able to take care of yourself in order to take care of other people. And we all contribute to a healthy environment. And really, there is no health without mental health.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that great baseline of information. Such great ways to start, ideas for starting those conversations. Can you tell me a little bit more about the yellow benches?
Well, I'm not sure I know a lot about the yellow benches, but it was to facilitate conversation, say in the hallways. The first yellow bench that was at SAS Poly was right in front of the elevators. And sometimes it was just, to encourage people to sit down, have a conversation, just to, chat about their day. And in some ways, it was just like relaxation in some ways, and in others, it was just awareness that this was a safe place in which to hold that conversation.
Very good. I've never heard of that. That's a great idea. So we do have a question, and please, now is the question time. So we'll stay on as long as people have questions, or till 1 o'clock, whichever one comes first. So are you aware of any formal nurse peer support groups in Regina?
I'm not aware of any formal nurse peer support groups, but certainly informally. It could be as an educator within nursing education. Some of us met, to talk about some of the issues that we may have had as nurse educators. And a lot of it was to support each other, which is the main critical thing. And I think it's important that if you believe that you need support, that it doesn't have to be a formal type of initiative. I think you can also be that person that starts it, to start that particular support group and get others to join the conversation. Sometimes it starts out really small, but as nurses, I think we all have common issues. If you're working on a particular ward, you might have some common issues that you want to be able to talk about. And I think it's important to just bring that to people's awareness, whether it's like each other's awareness. Hey, I'm going through this. Whether you're a teacher or whether you're a nurse on the floor or whether you're, wherever your practice environment may be. It's a great question. Sorry, I don't have any formal or know of any formal.
No, I think that's really true. And I know the SRNA, we have professional practice groups where people can connect and build some of those relationships offline, not specifically around mental health. Actually, we do have a mental health professional practice group. What am I saying? We do, which is just up and coming. We're just getting it started. So that's a new thing as well. We also have our online community where people can make some of those connections sort of offline a little bit. More informal place like you're talking. Are you aware, I know you mentioned the CMHA for online resources. Are you aware of any other online, like really good organizations to go to for information around mental health in the workplace?
There's lots of information under the Bell's Let's Talk. They have a toolkit which they want to provide to people, and one of their pillars, of course, is mental health in the workplace. Another one is language, research. So they have a toolkit, and within that toolkit, many of the ideas have already been brought forward in the presentation. But at the same time, if you want to know where to start, that's a place in which to start. And the Canadian Mental Health Association does have a number of resources as well. And it's, again, it's just a matter of tapping in and putting your requests or your query into that search and seeing what they can come up with. They've done a lot of the research already, around stigma, around mental illness, around, people and, people that are, have mental illness and how they can lead productive lives. And I think that's what we want to hear. We want to hear the success stories, not necessarily that, people have been, that they have a mental illness and they're not able to move forward. It's really important that we hear the success stories. So people like Clara Hughes and Michael Landsberg, they've all been very good in championing the cause about mental health and illness.
There's a really good question in here. So we have a situation at our workplace where the individual non-nurse has mental health issues, but it dominates every conversation, brings everyone down, really seems like more of an attention-seeking behavior. I strongly suspect she has some serious issues, and we really struggle to cope with this as it is so disruptive. Any ideas to help the rest of us cope with an individual like this?
What I would suggest in this particular situation is that you bring this forward to the employer and to make that particular person aware of the situation and how it's affecting everybody else. Because again, as an employer, you look for productivity in all your employees. And I think this would be a situation where if it's really dragging down everybody, and it seems like that's what's happening, then it could have negative consequences, like other people not wanting to come to work, or, spending time talking about issues that aren't related to work. But I mean, that's what we're talking about, that if you don't talk about it and if it's not brought to the awareness of everybody, then of course other people will become affected by it. So I would encourage that, you to take it to your employer if you haven't done so already, and to make that person aware. And maybe that person, the employer, can have a conversation with this person and provide some feedback in a respectful manner, and to offer assistance, whether it's resources or time off or whatever, to deal with the issues, because maybe that person is not even aware that this is how they're coming across. And as for coping with it, I mean, you're human too. And yes, it can drag you down at the same time, but I think it's your responsibility to speak up.
Mm-hmm. I think, the Bell's Let's Talk commercials that are on, some of those are really interesting because, there's the conversation starts out one way and flows into, this has to be really difficult for this person that they're talking about, that, has had depression or those kinds of things. So it is that movement of the conversation too, to understanding that yes, everybody's frustrated, but also it's very difficult for that person as well, and really helping them to get the help that they need to be healthier.
Mm-hmm. And you take a risk. You take a risk when you open up a conversation, when you initiate it and say, well, geez, something's going on here. What's going on? And, you know, you may get a very short response or you may get a very lengthy response. But I mean, that's the whole nature of mental health, is that people don't want to actually talk about it. And it's so important. It's part of holistic health. And as nurses, we're taught to assess holistic health, and mental health is part of that. And so it's really important to, you know, use our assessment skills, and to be able to use our assessment skills with our coworkers and with our patients, because they may really need us to initiate that conversation.
So another question, do you know of any good resources that discuss and build resilience?
I know there's been lots of really good articles about resilience, and but to me, a lot of I think it goes back to self-care and really being able to find that balance in your life. That helps you to build resilience so that you can better cope with the things that are going on in your life. If you don't have the reserves to be able to take care of yourself, it's really hard to take care of someone else or to be able to give. And, you know, like, I know when I'm off kilter, you know, I know when I'm off balance. And then I have to, you know, tell myself, okay, I need to, you know, take 2 or 3 hours off or a day off, or I need to make sure that I'm sleeping. You know, all those things are critical in building resilience. And I can look for some references related to resilience and post them with the PowerPoint as well. But I don't know of any right at the moment. But certainly that's something that we look for in our psychiatric clients, is do they have the resilience to be able to bounce back from, you know, what they're going through right now. And a lot of them are so resilient because of the situations that they've gone through. They've learned from them. They've been able to, you know, take those insights and develop, you know, strength so that they can build that resilience.
So some comments that the resources would be really helpful. We always post the recordings both on our website and in our online community of practice. So that's going to be a really great place for us to continue this conversation and post some of those resources as well, and get other people sharing some of their resources too. So we'll continue to do that. Do you have any suggestions for, you know, if you suspect that somebody is having a tough time from a mental health perspective, how you approach that conversation, like how you really, you know, you talked about asking, you know, are you okay today? Just a little bit of some suggestions for, you know, if you just leave it at that, or just some ideas for how, because so many people care, you know, and the person that you're reaching out to for sure has to accept that and those kinds of things. But
a couple of things come to mind is when we're in nursing, we have to be able to rely on our teammates. We have to be able to rely on the people that we're working with. And if you can't rely on those people, then I think of, I guess, adverse situations that can happen. where, you want them to come to your assistance, during a crisis, or if you've got a code white or something happening like that. So being able to count on your teammates is really, really critical to me. And I always teach that to students, we're different, and you don't have to like everybody, but you have to be able to work together. So how do we start the conversation? I mean, it seems like such a easy thing to do, but I guess, just making sure that you're respectful, that that person may resent that you've even brought it up at all. But I always err on the side that that person may be very thankful that you've brought up the conversation. And I would just choose your words very carefully and just say, I would just ask, are you doing okay? And hopefully you'll get an answer. The other thing is by sharing observations. I noticed you've been more quiet today. You seem to be more isolating. You're not spending time in the cafeteria with us. You're just more quiet and you're more to yourself. And is there something that's happening that do you want to talk about it? And I think you just frame it that way, and hopefully you'll get the conversation going.
Good. I'm going to put one last call for questions out. I haven't seen any for the last couple minutes here. Are there any other thoughts or anything in addition to your great presentation, Sue, that you'd like to share with our audience?
I'm just going to recap, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Mental health affects us all, whether it's personally, our patients and our coworkers. It's important to participate in the conversation and to keep it going. And due to the stressors of the job, make sure you take time for self-care. Listen as people tell their stories. And I know as nurses, we probably don't have a lot of time to listen, but sometimes, again, that might make all the difference in the world. Be aware of resources that are available. And the Bell's Let's Talk is only one day of the year. And there's many, many, we should pay attention to mental health each and every day. And again, there is no health without mental health. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you taking some time. We're going to be able to give people about half an hour of their lunch hour back, and so they can participate in some self-care. It's a little cold to go for a walk today, but maybe even just a little jog around the block or something. Just for our attendees, you will receive an email tomorrow with an evaluation, a link to an evaluation. So we really encourage you to complete that for us. We really appreciate those thoughts. And usually within about a day, the link will be available on our website as well. So thank you very much, Sue, for being here. And I wish everyone a very good day.